In a village far, far away, surrounded by lush green hills and winding rivers, lived a man named Sambo. He was the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about and fathers kept a wary eye on. Tall, strong, and devilishly handsome, Sambo was the heartthrob of the village. When he walked through the market square, baskets momentarily stopped balancing on heads, clay pots stood forgotten in the middle of the path, and young girls whispered behind cupped hands. But Sambo had a flaw, a dangerous one. He loved women too much. To him, every woman was a conquest, every glance an invitation. He didn't care if she was short or tall, slim or plump, young or even married. The thrill lay in the chase, the conquest, and the abandonment that followed. He would promise the moon, swear eternal love, and once he had what he wanted, move on without a backward glance. His mother, Mama Tolu, had watched her son destroy the futures of many girls. She had warned him countless times, "My son, the world does not forget a man who builds his joy on the tears of others. Settle down before the gods themselves humble you." But Sambo laughed off her concerns, patting her shoulder as though she were a child worried about shadows. "Mother," he'd say with a crooked smile, "a lion does not fear the mice of the forest." The lion, it seemed, was oblivious to the hunter lurking in the underbrush. One market day, Sambo's wandering eyes fell upon Yukai, a girl unlike any he had pursued before. Yukai was calm and graceful like the river at dawn. She wore a quiet smile and spoke little, her kindness echoing through the village like a soothing melody. Children adored her, elders praised her, and young men admired her from afar. But Yukai was not easily swayed by sweet words or charming smiles. To Sambo, this was merely another challenge. He approached her with the smooth confidence of a man who had never heard the word no for long. "Yukai," he said one evening, leaning casually against the wall of her father's compound, "if the sun ever refused to rise, your smile alone would light up the village." Yukai chuckled softly. "Sambo," she replied, her eyes steady and unimpressed, "the sun rises for all, but I do not shine for just anyone." But Sambo was relentless. Day after day he pursued her, swearing love, painting dreams, and eventually promising marriage. Even Mama Tolu, tired of her son's reckless ways, found herself daring to hope. "Maybe Yukai's calm heart will tame my wild son," she murmured to herself. Finally, Yukai's defenses fell, and she believed Sambo's words. She believed him when he took her to meet his mother. She believed him when he spoke of their future under the moonlight. And she believed him most when he whispered, "You are the only one." Until the day she told him she was pregnant. "What do you mean you're pregnant?" Sambo's voice exploded in the small hut they shared. Yukai, her hands trembling, looked at the man she had trusted. "I'm having your child, Sambo." "Your child? I thought you'd be happy." But Sambo's face twisted with rage and denial. "That child isn't mine. Am I the only man you've been with?" Yukai's heart shattered. She knew the truth, but Sambo's words cut deeper than any blade. Humiliated and heartbroken, she returned to her parents, who, bound by tradition and shame, marched her back to Sambo's house. "You will marry her," her father commanded, his voice cold. "You will not disgrace our family." And so, a wedding was held. No songs were sung. No drums beat joyfully in the air. The villagers whispered as they watched Yukai, her belly barely showing, walk beside a man whose face was as hard as stone. Marriage did not change Sambo. If anything, it made him crueler. He treated Yukai not as a wife but as an unwanted burden. He raged at her for the smallest things, his hands quick to punish, his words sharper than thorns. When Yukai gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, a perfect reflection of Sambo, he refused to even look at the child. "This is your problem," he sneered, turning his back. "Not mine." For a year, Yukai struggled, raising her daughter alone under the same roof as a man who had long ceased to care. Until one night, in a drunken fury, Sambo threw her and the child out. "I don't want to see you ever again." Yukai, holding her baby close, stumbled into the darkness. Behind her, Sambo stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face void of remorse. He was free again, or so he thought. With Yukai gone, Sambo's appetite for women only grew. This time, his eyes settled on Amaka, the wife of Iena, a poor but hard-working farmer. Iena spent his days sweating under the sun, toiling to provide for his family, while Sambo, like a snake, slithered into his home when his back was turned. One fateful afternoon, Sambo found himself once again in Iena's house, the forbidden thrill of betrayal clouding his judgment. He and Amaka lay in bed, satisfaction painted on their faces. Then it happened. Kokoroku. The sound burst from Sambo's mouth, sharp and unnatural, like a rooster crowing at dawn. Amaka's eyes widened in horror as Sambo stumbled off the bed, his hand flying to his lips. Kokoroku. It came again, louder, echoing through the thin mud walls of the hut. The villagers heard it. People dropped their baskets and children stopped playing. "Who is crowing like a rooster?" they asked, eyes darting toward Iena's house. But the crowing did not stop. It grew louder, more desperate. Sambo, the proud womanizer, stood frozen, his mouth betraying him with every crow. The villagers stormed into the house, finding him standing there, bare-chested, ashamed, and unable to speak like a man. Iena was fetched from the farm. When he arrived and saw his wife cowering in the corner and Sambo, the infamous seducer, crowing like a rooster, his face darkened. "The charm has worked," he said coldly. The village elders were called, wise men with faces carved by time and eyes that had seen generations rise and fall. They listened as Iena explained. "I had placed a charm on my wife, the Eek charm. It is meant to punish any man who dares sleep with her. The moment the sin is committed, the man will crow like a rooster until death claims him." The crowd gasped, elders nodding grimly. Magic was not uncommon, but such a powerful and specific curse was rare. Iena continued, "But because of your pleas, I will grant Sambo one chance to live. He must fulfill one condition. He must suck his mother's breast for 7 days. Only then will the charm be broken. If not, he will crow until his heart stops." Sambo, bound and humiliated, was dragged to his mother's house. When Mama Tolu heard what had happened, her face darkened with fury. "No," she shouted, tears brimming in her eyes. "I warned him. I begged him to change. Let him face the consequences of his wickedness." But the elders pleaded. "He is still your son. Will you let him die?" Finally Mama Tolu sighed, her heart heavy. "I will do it. But after these 7 days, he is no longer my son. I disown him." For 7 days Sambo, the once proud heartbreaker, was reduced to a whimpering shell of himself. His head hung low as he nursed at his mother's breast, the taste of humility bitter on his tongue. He did not speak, except for occasional sobs that escaped between crows. In those silent moments, regret consumed him. He saw the faces of the women he had hurt, the promises he had broken, and the futures he had destroyed. He thought of Yukai, the only woman who had believed in his goodness, and the daughter he had never held. On the 7th day, the crowing stopped. "It is done," Mama Tolu said, stepping away from her son. Her face was cold, her voice void of warmth. "You live, but you are no longer my child. Go, and never return." Sambo's legs trembled as he stood. The village watched in silence, the once proud man now a broken shadow. He stumbled away from the home he had known, the people who had once admired him now turning their backs. With nowhere else to go, he wandered until he reached a small village far from home, a place where no one knew his name or his shame. There he lived quietly, avoiding women, avoiding friendship, and avoiding the eyes of the gods he had once mocked. The tale of Sambo, the man who crowed like a rooster and had to suck his mother's breast to survive, spread from village to village. Mothers told their sons, fathers warned their daughters, and every ear that heard the story understood the lesson. Reckless desire leads only to ruin.